Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Medium's Porch. I want to check in with everybody first. Are you ready for what's coming up this summer? There's going to be wonderful things happening in Lilydale, and I want to make sure if you haven't checked online, please be reminded right now by this statement to do so. There is a lot going on, and you want to get that house, that guest house reserved in advance so that you're ready to go. So just a little reminder to go to www.lilydaleassembly.org. All right, so here we are in the Medium's Porch, and this is another episode with the Lilydale Registered Mediums. And as you know, I've invited them on board here, to those that want to do this, to come on and just talk a little bit about themselves, about their mediumship, etc. So having said that, I want to get started right away, and I want to introduce you to Simon Caudullo. Now, did I say your last name right, Simon?
Caudullo.
Caudullo. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I've heard different people say it different ways, and I've been meaning to ask you. And just as I heard myself say it out loud, I thought this is the perfect opportunity. So welcome.
Thank you very much for having me today.
I'm glad to have you. And for those of you that don't know Simon, he is a minister, a medium, a healer, and a teacher. Simon has been a site counselor, and he's held administrative positions at the Catholic Charities and here in Lilydale. He's been the founding director of and manager of Beverly Hills Ballet Company, Southampton Ballet Company, and the Conservatory of Dance with revsimon. For those of you who have made Simon's acquaintance and don't know this, he has been a Benedictine monk, and I'm hoping a little later we'll be able to bring up a little bit about that because that's new information for me. Simon is a graduate of the School of Spiritual Healing and Prophecy and of the Fellowships of the Spirit in Lilydale. And without further ado, let's start with that first question, Simon. What can you tell me? If I was brand new to mediumship, what would you tell me about mediumship? What would be important to get across to me?
Well, as mediums in Lilydale, we're also spiritualists. And as spiritualists, we understand that life continues after what we call death. And that is where the medium comes in. The medium is that go-between two worlds. You know, we often talk about the veil, and how thin it's becoming, and it is. And the medium is that person that is the vessel for spirit coming through and making those connections. And it's really a privilege to, first of all, be a registered medium in Lilydale, but also to I find myself at this point of my life, as I just celebrate my 75th birthday, and I'm so happy to be able to this point of my life to be giving in this way. Mediumship is about healing. We had a teacher in fellowship, Elaine Thomas, and she's now passed. But she was just an incredible teacher. And the thing that she taught me was just that mediumship was about healing. It's about healing not just the person that sits in front of you, but also the spirit on the other side. So often in the dealings that I've had, you will find that the soul that passed wasn't able to express themselves, that wasn't good emotionally, or may have caused some damage to their family members, and they never got to say they were sorry. And so often that comes through in a reading. They will take that opportunity, and it's really quite beautiful because when you see it unfolding, the sitter is just they're almost lost for words, and you can see when they make this connection, and as they get up and leave your room, you can feel the healing that has already started to take place. And so for me, that's what mediumship is about. It is about bringing evidence, because in Lilydale, we are evidential mediums, meaning that we present evidence things that I would have no way of knowing about the people on the other side, the dead folks. As I don't like to call them dead because I feel like we don't die. We just, we just change forms. We know from science that we're all energy, and energy doesn't die, it just changes forms. And so there's this process that takes place for the sitter and for the spirit. And so bringing that evidence in can leave no doubt, or should leave no doubt, for the sitter that they are connected truly with their loved one. So that's also very important. And as mediums in Lilydale, we always try to present not just who we're bringing in, whether bringing in a mother or a father, but information about them. And Spirit uses us in the most crazy way, because they use what we have and who we are. And my years in psych, having worked with people that way, many, many, many times I will get personalities. And so I'll start talking about the person that had passed, whether it's a mother or father, whoever it is, and their personality. And I have no way of knowing that, but that's what they're giving me. And
Right.
for me, that's wonderful. And if we can drop a name in, that's even better. So that's one of the things that I teach a weekly Zoom class to people that are developing both psychically and mediumistically. And one of the things that I try to emphasize is to give that evidence, to give that connection, so that the sitter can know without doubt that we have their loved one there. So there's always that going on in class, and it's a fun class because we will ask people to, friends to come in, and then we'll give them readings, and it's really quite fun. And over the past 2 years, I've been doing it for, I guess, 3 years now, and I take a break during the summer, but then we come back, and it is always kind of special to see how people in the class are growing and how their mediumship is growing. And not everybody is there to be a medium. Not everybody wants to be a professional medium, but they do want to be able to maybe connect with a loved one, or they want to be more in tune with their own self and what's going on with them.
So you would say that studying mediumship is a way of developing our own spirit, our own ability to connect with spirit to spirit, living to living, meaning living in the spirit world as well as here, so we can be in touch with our family. Would I be correct in saying you're saying that?
You're
Yeah.
absolutely correct. And the thing that I always say to the class is that what we're trying to do is learn who we are.
Okay.
Really the bottom line to our mediumship, because every day we learn something about ourselves, and in mediumship that is certainly the case. The other thing, you mentioned earlier, that I was a monk. I was a monk for 10 years, connected longer, but one of the things that I've become more and more aware of these days, is that whole thing of we were taught in the monastery about contemplation. We were taught meditation, but we also taught contemplation. Contemplation is about mindfulness.
Okay.
It's that being that connected at all times. Meditation, you can't, you do 15 minutes or you do, a half hour, and then you're kind of done and you get back into the world. Mindfulness is being part of the world and being appreciative of each moment and each thing that you come across. And I believe that we all should be striving to become more and more enlightened. And as enlightened beings, we go from maybe unconditional love. We don't always love everybody, to
Can work
unconditional.
at it though.
Right. Um, we're not always all that lovable, but we need at this point to kind of strive for that, try to be that, to love unconditionally. And
When you're teaching, then you're being informed by that wisdom that you've developed through that work as a monk, and you're helping people understand, who they are, or putting emphasis there at the very least, right?
yes, I believe, spirit calls us, and everyone comes from, they bring different tools as we talk about them, to mediumship. Um, there are those that are medical intuitives,
Hmm.
and many times they have, and it helps them if they were perhaps a nurse in their, we'll say, former life, and so they bring that, and then they be able to connect. You don't have to become a medical intuitive, but I believe that it certainly does help. Um, but there are all kinds of, mediums. There are those that, are evidential. And I also feel like there are those that are heart mediums. And what I mean by that is that um, the message that they give comes from the heart, and it touches the heart, and it changes the person that's sitting there. And
Okay,
that's part of that healing process that takes place.
I
Not
see.
everybody's a heart medium. And there's not, just as not everybody may be evidential medium. If they are in Lilydale, then they are, right?
Yes, because we have to take the test to prove that we know what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, it's a 2-year process.
Yes.
And it can be very vigorous. Um, but I always say, we're only as good as our last reading, you know. Um, all too often, we can sometimes forget that we're human, and we have days that we may not be at our peak. And so we need to also understand that and acknowledge it.
So what do you do when you have an off day? Do you have a way to replenish yourself in some way?
Uh, when I'm having kind of an off day, I kind of retreat, if I can.
Okay.
And right now, because I'm right by the water, so I go to the ocean, I go to the beach. That is my holy place, and it is the place that regenerates me and renews me. So yeah, yeah. And if I have a client that comes in and for one reason or another we're just not connecting, I just say that. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't read you today. It's the energy, and perhaps tomorrow would be different, but um, I want you to have a good reading, so I want to give you time to look for another medium in the day. It doesn't happen often, maybe once a season, but it does happen. And I think as humans, we have to acknowledge that and not be too proud about it. You know,
Right. So with all this background that you've had in the variety of things, you've mentioned evidence. And one of the things that came to my mind when you were talking, and it's never a way I've thought about it before, but I thought, well, so much is evidence. It can be a name, a date, a serial number. Well, not that anybody really gets serial numbers, but who knows? They might. Um, but there's also the evidence of personality, the phrases, the conversations, the posturing. There's so many. And I just had this thought when you were talking. We could classify it as hard evidence. I'm just throwing this thought out there, but we could classify it as hard evidence and soft evidence, but equal in value to the person sitting across from us. So, having said that, evidence, using whichever layer of evidence we're talking about there, when you're giving your reading, is there something particular that you notice your guides work with you upon? Meaning that if I came to you for a reading, we're going to see a lot of that showing up typically across the board. Getting a reading from Simon. Is there anything you can think of that the guides really bring forth through you with your background?
there are two things that will repeat themselves. So one of the things that I became aware of several years ago, many years ago, is if I have somebody that comes in and the loved one is a suicide, then what I find that over the course of that week, several weeks, I start getting lots of suicides. Because I believe what happens is spirit on the
Yeah.
other side goes, this guy gets it. And so they start bringing in, it's an incredible process. They start bringing in other suicides, and I will think to myself, my goodness, what is going on? It's because the other thing that I find is, because I was an alcoholism counselor and worked with alcoholics for like some 15 years, I get a lot of that. I will
Okay.
get a lot of those souls that have crossed over who were alcoholic and who caused great grief to their family. And and part of the evidence is what that means in each of those persons' cases, because it's different for everyone.
Right. And then that healing process steps in because you have an ability to recognize the sophistication of the information as it's coming through and the value that it has, right? So you will be able to know and adapt to the vocabulary or feelings or sensations that maybe somebody else isn't as astute with, right? So you could
Exactly.
bring that forward to that person, and that person would be ideal to sit with you then in that case. Yeah.
That I feel is like the intelligence of spirit.
Yeah.
And and when we are able to connect in that way, after the reading is over and I'm sitting, because I like to, after the person's left, I like to sit for a few minutes and speak to spirit and say, how did I do? Did I
Yeah.
right? Did I identify everything that you wanted, And I think that that's part of a learning process. They don't hold on to it. And I get a lot of repeat clients, and I have to say, embarrassed that I might be, I recognize the name. I don't remember you. I never remember what I say.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, way back when, I used to panic because I'd go, oh, well, what if I say the wrong thing and I get the wrong spirit and I'm not got the dead person, and uh, you just let that go, and spirit just works with you. It's just amazing, the whole process.
I loved how you mentioned that because it comes up a lot when I talk to mediums, and I'm glad it does because people listening, they're not maybe listening to every show we do, right? So when they do tune in, it's good to hear again that we as mediums are continually developing. And even in the Eastern teaching, right, they talk about the beginner's mind, that mind that goes back to the beginning with all its excitement, with all its wonder, with all its desire to discover. So there's always more. There's more depth, there's more trust, there's more getting out of our own way, isn't there?
Yes, beautifully said. That beginner, and so often we forget what
Yeah.
it was like to be a beginner,
Mm.
and how difficult those first times were, and the connections that we were trying to make. And so if we can remember that when we're teaching, then we're able to touch that beginner in a way that is helpful.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you have some remarkable experiences that are just, let's use the word magical, shall we? I know none of this is typically magic by definition. But what are some things that you might want to share? Stories, little anecdotes, things that really keep you in this, you know? What do you think people would want to hear about?
Well, that's a good question. Um, I don't always remember every sitting, impossible to.
Of course.
But I this one's kind of story kind of stands out. It happened probably 6 years ago. It was around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was winter. There was a knock on the door, and there were three people standing there. And I asked them what they were looking for, and they said they've been trying to get a reading in Lilydale,
Okay.
and no one was available. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's dinner time for us, right? So we
Not to
do have,
mention winter, right?
yeah, we do have dinner, So I invited them to come in, and the first thing I kind of asked was why they wanted a reading to get together. Was there somebody, that one person that they wanted to connect with? They said yes. And so I invited them in, and immediately the spirit came in, and it was a young man. And and in the course of the conversation, I realized that his brother was one of the clients, and his sister was another, and then the boyfriend was there as a third party. And then I became aware of, in speaking with the spirit, that he kept showing me a pickup, and they said yes, he did have a white pickup, and and then I said, he's got a gun. I feel like it's a gun in the back of the truck. And they're like, no. They were like, no. And I'm like, so often, we have to interpret what spirit is giving us, and we can sometimes get the interpretation just a little bit off. And then I'm like, nope, nope, he's showing me a gun. And then they said he committed suicide with the gun.
And he
And
was it the back of the head? Is that why it was? Yeah.
exactly. And and then I said to the young man, his brother, and I'm like, um, he shows me that you go into the mirror in the bathroom, and that's where you are able to grieve, and that you're looking at him, and I'm like, you look just like him. And he said, we were twins.
Oh,
And then I moved to his sister and said, he's telling me not to feel guilty, that you should not feel guilty, that you weren't meant to be there, that he organized this so that you wouldn't be. And what she had been living with was the fact that that day she had said that she couldn't make that time with him. And of course, that was um, and and so after we finished, and there were many other things, after we finished, you could just feel the lightness that they left with. There was a heaviness when they came in. It was gray, and when they left, you could see that there was a lightness, and they were so much more um, free of all these heavy guilt feelings.
how beautiful. Yeah.
That has stuck with me, and I feel like, to create that, to be able to give that to somebody, that healing is what we do. And we don't get rich by what we do, but we do get rich. So I know sometimes people say, oh, people charge so much. It's just like, it is a change, an exchange of energy that has to take place.
In spiritualism, it's ministerial as well, right? So we're always in this position of service, or rather, if we're doing our job well, we're in that place of intent for the benefit of another, right?
Right. Right.
And
A lot
ministry,
of us take
that
classes, a
spiritual.
lot of us take classes, and we have to pay for those. And so we're always trying to increase our education. Um, I'm a reader, and my summers, I call them my summers. It's actually your winter, but it's my summer because during the summer months in Lilydale, I don't get out. I'm sitting there for 8 hours a day without a
Exactly.
day off. So I never see the summer, but so I come down to Florida, and
There
this
you
is
go.
my summer, and so
Yeah.
it's my reading time, it's my educating myself, it's my refreshing and renewing myself, and we have to give that to ourselves.
Yes, exactly. Do you read when you're in Florida as well? Do you do in persons, or do you just stick to virtual?
I only do phone readings when I'm here,
Okay.
and I do have a lot that come through, and a lot of um, recurring clients are always coming back and getting readings. Yeah.
Nice. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you were able to join me today. Is there anything else that you want our sitters to know? We've got the whole Lilydale Assembly and all the viewers on Facebook here are looking at our story here. So is there something you want to share?
Well, you had mentioned it to me earlier, so I pulled up my calendar book.
Good,
Um,
perfect. Yeah,
so I'm chairing
summer season. Okay.
for the season at Forest Temple on July 29th until um, August. That's September,
7 days, right?
till August 3rd. And then again, I chair at the 5:30 service from 5:30 from August 11th through the 17th.
Okay.
And then I'm also doing Adventures in Mediumship, which is a fun evening, and that's on August 6th. We all step up at Lilydale to try to be of service to the community and to our brother and sister mediums. We all do that.
I have a
So
quick question for you about your chairing. If I was listening to this program and learning about you and your love of teaching and your love of going forward, would you be supportive of me if I was a practicing medium and I wanted to try out my abilities at a demonstration at the outdoor services when you're chairing?
For me, chairing is about teaching. It's about teaching those that are there
Yeah.
how mediumship works, the different types of messages and how they come through. And I am very, very supportive to what we call student mediums. And every year I get a whole bunch of student mediums that come and serve for me. And in fact, some of my class have asked when I'm, going to be chairing so that they can come and serve. So it's a beautiful time because it's all about developing. All of us, we're all developing.
And what a wonderful opportunity for those developing, because we have anywhere from what, maybe as low as 50 people in a given day at one of these services, and we do 3 a day during season, right? And up to, I think the most I've had when I was chairing was like 250 or something at one point. It was huge.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough seats for everybody. It was great.
It
So
is
a
it
wonderful
is
opportunity to serve them.
then, like when you get up in front of that kind of a large crowd, you have to project your voice, and it is it's fun though. But it's also good sometimes, as the medium, you get up and you kind of your knees are shaking a little bit.
Yeah.
Like John White,
Yes.
um our friend John White, who passed last year, he used to say to me, Simon, if you're not nervous, you need to go home.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree with him because as a previous performer in my earlier life here before mediumship, that energy is so. Of course, it's spirit ramping you up as well, but some of that nervousness is needed to project your field, to project your energy. So it's basically a performance presence. Now, we don't like to think of mediumship as a performance because that implies maybe some inauthentic presentation or something to a script, which of course none of us do. We walk up there and we don't know what we're going to say before we say it. So that's a whole different conversation about how that works. But definitely when you get up there, there is that energy raising, and you can interpret it. I always tell my students, well, it's the same place in the body that it's happening that it would if you were excited. So you can decide to think of it as nervousness, or you can take it to the positive end, I'm excited. And that will totally shift the way you're approaching, and it helps with your openness. So I love I love teaching too.
Beautifully said. Yes, yes, yes. Very nice.
So yeah, anything else you want to share before we go here?
No,
Oh, your address. Where do we find you?
um I have a website. It's if you go to Lilydale .com, there's a whole list of mediums and I'm there. My website is Simon.com. Pretty simple.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of information, how to get in touch with me. And
What's
I
your address and the physical location in Lilydale?
I'm at 6 South Street and I have been there now
I'm in.
over 10 years. So yeah, it's
Okay. And if anybody forgets the address, don't worry. It'll be all publicized online. You can check your phones or you can check the book if you have a book with you. And there's also, as soon as you come in the gate, there'll be a big poster there that's white on the post office building to your right as you first come in. And it has everybody's address, but you'll be able to find Simon there listed with his address. So no worries finding him. It's a small town anyway, right?
yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
Well,
Well, we say, people spirit directs where that sitter is going to go, so we never worry. We just let spirit do its work.
Yeah, that happens so often. Simon, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your wisdom and your background and your enthusiasm with us. I really very much appreciate it. And I hope our listeners enjoyed it as well. So do seek Simon out. For the rest of you, I hope you have a lovely evening. Tune in next week because I am going to be doing this weekly now since we have so many people to talk with before the season begins. Season begins in Lilydale on the 21st of June. So I wish you all well and tune in again so we can connect with spirit. Bye for now.
I know. Thank you.